Hi everyone, Finn and Flask here. So today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different because I've seen a lot of people talking about GPT online. I want to see what AI thinks about the Blackpowder community and muzzleloading weapons and all that stuff, and all the things that can come along with it. So I just created an account this morning, and the only thing I've texted it so far was hello, and it basically came back and said, "Hello, how can I help you today?" And I'm going to come up with some things to ask it. So I put in there, "I'd like to have your input on the historical significance of muzzleloading firearms." Ooh. Okay, so it's putting a lot of stuff down. Alright, stop. Oh. Okay. I probably put it I probably stopped it at a good point because it came up with finally. So muzzleloading firearms played a significant role in shaping the course of human history. They were the primary firearms used by soldiers, hunters, and civilians for several centuries, from the 16th century to the mid-19th century. In the military context, the widespread use of muzzleloading firearms changed the dynamics of warfare. It allowed for a higher rate of fire and greater accuracy at longer ranges than traditional weapons like spears and swords. This led to the development of new military tactics and strategies that took advantage of the increased lethality of firearms. Muzzleloading firearms also played a crucial role in the exploration and colonization of new lands. European settlers used firearms to conquer and displace indigenous peoples in North America, South America, and other parts of the world. In addition, the use of firearms helped explorers, settlers defend themselves in hostile wildlife and bandits. In the hunting context, muzzleloading firearms allowed more efficient and effective hunting of game animals, which was crucial for both subsistence and sport. The developments of muzzleloading rifles with rifle barrels also allowed for greater accuracy and longer effective range, making hunters safer and more effective. Finally, the development of muzzleloading firearms led to significant advances in manufacturing and metallurgy. Gun makers had to refine their techniques to produce firearms that were reliable. Well, a couple things that I see in here. Let me see. Well, muzzleloaders were around before the 16th century, but in strange formats like arquebuses and the little things they tie to the end of sticks. And it says increase for a higher rate of fire. Some of the, what do you call it? Some of the people who were skilled archers, like the Comanche and stuff like that, could put out way more arrows than you could put out with a muzzleloader. I see that as an inaccuracy. I mean, it did increase range from bows and stuff like that and spears, but it seems to be relatively on point. Okay. I'll put in, can you tell me the history of the American long rifle? You know what? I'm going to put in Kentucky rifle and see if it corrects to American long rifle. So the Kentucky rifle, also known as a Pennsylvania rifle, didn't say anything about American long rifle, was a type of muzzleloading rifle that was developed in the early 18th century in the American colonies. It was renowned for its accuracy, long range, and distinctive appearance. The Kentucky rifle was typically around 4 to 5 feet long and had a barrel length of around 36 to 42 inches. And was often made with a flintlock ignition system, and the stock was usually made of hardwood such as maple or walnut. The rifling of the barrel gave the Kentucky rifle its distinctive spiral grooves, which imparted a spin to the bullet and improved accuracy. The Kentucky rifle was first developed by German immigrants who settled in Pennsylvania and other parts of the American colonies. They brought with them the knowledge and skills of European gun making, which they adapted to suit the needs of the American frontier. I think that was, it gives you a thing to click to tell you if you thought it was a better response. So I said I think that was better. I'm no expert on American long rifles, but you know, I'm just starting to get into them. But everything seems pretty close to me. They were long barreled. I mean, I think they had them longer than 42 inches, but I think it said typically. Yeah, it said typically. All right. So I was actually reading in a magazine the other day that in historical times they never actually called them flintlocks. I think they called them firelocks, which is actually pretty interesting. Well, they probably didn't even use firelock all that much because there was no reason to separate them because it was the only thing really available at the time. So I want to ask him. I think I'm going to ask. When was the term flintlock first coined? Okay, you got to stop this thing from generating because it seems like it'll just go on forever. So it says the term flintlock was first coined in the late 17th century, around the time the flintlock ignition system was developed. The flintlock mechanism was an improvement over early ignition systems like the matchlock and wheel lock, as it was more reliable and faster to operate. The term flintlock refers to the use of a small piece of flint held in the jaws of a spring-loaded hammer to strike against a steel plate called the frizzen. The impact of the flint against the frizzen creates sparks that ignited the gunpowder in the pan, which in turn ignited the main charge in the barrel and fired the bullet. Flintlock firearms became increasingly popular in the 18th and early 19th centuries and were widely used by military forces, hunters, and civilians. They were gradually replaced by newer ignition systems like the percussion cap and the cartridge, and it just kind of cut it out because I had to stop it. So this goes against what I was just reading, saying it was first coined in the late 17th century. And it seems to use more modern terms. They call it a frizzen instead of the hammer, and they call the cock the hammer. So, I mean, it's in and about right, but it isn't keeping to the historical context that I was looking for. So I'm going to ask, because it's supposed to keep up with you, I'm going to ask it, what is a firelock? A firelock is an early type of firearm ignition system that predates the flintlock. The term firelock refers to the mechanism by which a gunpowder charge was ignited to fire the bullet. In a firelock, a slow-burning match cord, also known as a match, was attached to a clamp on the outside of the weapon. When the trigger was pulled, the clamp lowered the match into a small pan of gunpowder, igniting it to causing the main charge in the ignite and fire the bullet. The firelock mechanism was developed in the 15th and 16th centuries. Okay, well that's going against what I just read, but I don't think it's that bad. I gotta think of some other things to put in here. I'm just kind of freewheeling and seeing how the conversation goes. Okay, so I typed this. Can you source the earliest documented use of the term flintlock? Ooh. So maybe that thing I said was wrong. Okay. So it says, the earliest documented use of the term flintlock that I could find is in a military manual titled A Complete Body of the Art of the Military by Thomas Symes, which was published in London in 1702. In this manual, Symes described the flintlock mechanism and refers to it as a lock with a flint, or a flint lock. The term flintlock became more widely used in the 18th and 19th centuries as the mechanism became increasingly popular and was adopted by militaries around the world. However, it is important to note that the term may have been used informally or in local dialects prior to the appearance in written sources. So I thought I learned something new, and then I lost it. Okay, so I asked it a few things in general about flintlocks, but now I'm going to get a little more specific. So I'm going to ask it about stuff that's relevant to my area. So I'm a Yankee through and through, and basically I'm interested in stuff that happened around here. So I'm going to ask it. So what I put in here was, what type of weapons were with the Pilgrims when they landed at Plymouth? Okay, I gotta stop it before it gets way out of hand. And hopefully the beginning will give me a good thing. So the weapons carried by the Pilgrims when they landed at Plymouth in 1620 were primarily muskets and matchlock firearms. The Pilgrims were a group of English separatists who left English in search of religious freedom and settled in what is now Massachusetts. Muskets were the primary firearm used by the English soldiers at the time and were commonly used by the colonists for hunting and defense. They were muzzleloading firearms with smoothbore barrel, typically fired by lighting a match cord that ignited the gunpowder in the pan, which then ignited the main charge and fired the main bullet. Matchlock firearms were also used by the Pilgrims, similar to muskets in design, but use a different ignition system. The matchlock slow-burning match cord was used to ignite the gunpowder in the pan. Okay. What I've heard recently is there were a few matchlocks there, but they used a lot of wheel locks and snap-ons, as I think they say it. I've only ever seen it written, so I don't know how to say that word. So I don't see this as too accurate from what I know, but I'm, of course, no expert. I'm just starting to get into this stuff. I asked it, what types of firearms were first traded to the Native Americans? The types of firearms that were first traded to the Native Americans by European explorers and traders varied upon the period and location. However, some of the earliest firearms that were traded to Native Americans in North America were matchlock muskets and arquebuses. Matchlock muskets were muzzle-loading firearms with a smoothbore barrel. Yeah, it's the same. It's essentially the same. Arquebuses were similar to matchlock muskets, but were smaller and lighter with a shorter barrel. Other type of firearms were traded in North America in the 17th and 18th centuries, included flintlock. Okay, I'm gonna ask it. First documented case of trading with the natives. Okay, I just stopped it at 2 paragraphs. It's difficult to determine the exact date of the first documented trade of a firearm to a Native American, as there were many interactions and exchange between Native American tribes and European explorers and traders throughout the 16th and 17th century. However, one of the earliest recorded instances of firearms being traded to Native Americans occurred in 1583, when English explorer Sir Humphrey Gilbert traded muskets to the Beothuk tribe in what is now Newfoundland. Another documented example of firearms being traded to Native Americans, I cut it off before it and went further, but that's pretty early. That's earlier than I thought it would be. Okay, so I asked, what were the common firearms used during King Philip's War? I'm gonna let this run a little bit. Okay. Okay, King Philip's War, hold on, I rolled past it, was a conflict between Native Americans and Native American tribes and English colonists in New England. During this war, both sides used a variety of firearms, including muskets, matchlocks, and pistols. Muskets were the most common firearm in use by both sides during the war. These were muzzle-loading firearms with a smooth bore barrel that was typically fired by igniting gunpowder in the pan, which in turn ignited the main charge and fired the bullet. Matchlocks were also used during the war, although they were becoming less common as flintlock firearms began to replace them. Matchlocks were similar to muskets, but used a slower ignition system that required a match cord. Pistols were also used during the war, primarily by officers and cavalry. These were smaller firearms that were designed to be carried on horseback and fired with one hand. It's worth noting that firearms technology was still relatively primitive during this time, and firearms were not yet as reliable and effective as they are today. And they would become in later centuries. As a result, both sides relied on a combination of firearms and traditional weapons like bows and arrows and spears and tomahawks. I was pretty sure that dog locks were pretty common during King Philip's War. All right, so I think I have enough of my flintlock questions out of the way. Let's ask it about cap locks. I asked it, when was the percussion cap invented? Okay, I gotta stop it. The percussion cap was invented in 1807 by Scottish clergyman and inventor Alexander John Forsyth. Forsyth was attempting to improve the ignition system of firearms, at which time relied on flint and steel to create a spark. Forsyth's invention involved a small metal cap that contained a tiny amount of explosive material. When struck by a firing pin or a hammer, the cap exploded, igniting the gunpowder and firing a bullet. The percussion cap was a significant improvement over earlier ignition systems. It was more reliable, faster, and more consistent. It quickly became popular and was widely adopted by militaries and hunters around the world. The percussion cap also paved the way for the development of modern cartridge. When was the first percussion cap installed in a cartridge? Okay. The first successful centerfire cartridge using a percussion cap was invented by a French gunsmith named Casimir Lechauffoux in 1836. The cartridge consisted of a brass or copper casing that held the gunpowder and bullet. The percussion cap was installed at the base of the cartridge. This new type of cartridge was a major improvement over earlier cartridges, which used a pinfire or rimfire ignition system. The centerfire cartridge with a percussion cap was more reliable and easier to manufacture and allowed for higher pressure and velocity. The centerfire cartridge with a percussion cap quickly became popular and was widely adopted by militaries and hunters around the world. I was watching some videos by Forgotten Weapons, and I'm pretty sure that this date is late for what he's saying, because I thought he had a double-barrel shotgun that, essentially, as soon as they came out with the percussion cap, a French gunsmith made a break-action side-by-side double-barrel shotgun immediately. For some reason, it didn't take off, and it was a center fire, if I remember correctly. I haven't seen that video in a long time, but I mean, it could be right, it could be wrong. I think it's off though. Who invented the first revolver? Okay. Let it run a little bit. It goes to first practical, so it doesn't tell you any of the weird flintlock revolvers they had, stuff like that. So this is the first practical revolver was invented by Samuel Colt in the United States in the 1830s. Colt revolver used a rotating cylinder with multiple chambers that allowed the shooter to fire several rounds quickly without reloading, the major invention in firearms design. As early fires typically required manual reloading after each shot. Colt's first revolver, the Colt Patterson, was invented in 1836 and went into production the following year. It was a 5-shot revolver that used a percussion cap ignition system, and it quickly gained a reputation for its reliability and accuracy. The Colt Patterson was followed by a series of other successful revolver designs, including the Colt Walker, the Colt Dragoon, and the Colt Single Action Army. What was the first multi-barreled weapon? Okay. The concept of multi-barreled weapons dates back many centuries, but one of the earliest known examples of a practical multi-barrel weapon was the knock volley gun, which was invented by the British gunsmith James Wilson in the late 18th century. The knock volley gun has 7 barrels arranged in a cluster and was designed to fire all 7 barrels at once with a single pull of the trigger. This made it a devastatingly effective weapon at close range, as it could deliver a hail of bullets all at once. The knock volley gun was used by British soldiers during the Napoleonic Wars, and it saw limited use in other conflicts as well. However, it was eventually replaced by more modern firearms, and today is primarily the interest of collectors and historians. Those volley guns, I don't really find them to be all that interesting. I think it's kind of a waste. But I mean, maybe if you had barrels all pointing in different directions, it could be effective. But it doesn't seem all that useful to me personally. But what I was really looking for is side-by-sides or, swivel breaches. So I'm going to try to rephrase the question. Okay, I'm going for when was the first side-by-side weapon made? Okay, the side-by-side shotgun, also known as a double-barrel shotgun, is a type of shotgun with two parallel barrels that are mounted next to each other. Also known as a side-by-side shotgun, was produced in Spain in the early 16th century. That's pretty interesting. That's really early. However, it wasn't until the 18th and 19th century that side-by-side shotguns became more widely used and popular. Gunsmiths in England and other European countries began producing side-by-side shotguns with improved designs and better materials, which made them more reliable and effective. The side-by-side shotgun became particularly popular for hunting, as it allows hunters to fire 2 shots in quick succession without needing to reload. It was also used for sporting and competition shooting, and it remains a popular type of shotgun today. Okay, let's do swivel breach. Okay, it corrected my phrasing, which is kind of cool. I believe you may be referring to the swivel breech mechanism, which is a type of loading system for firearms that was used in some rifles and shotguns in the 19th century. Well, they had them during the Revolution, so it's 18th century. The swivel breech mechanism was designed to make it easier and quicker to load the firearm. It involved a breech block that was hinged at the side and could be swung out of the way to allow access to the chamber. The shooter then could load or unload the chamber by swinging the breech block back in place. I think it's coming towards like doing a sharps or something like that. I'm thinking like a sharps or like that weird screw breech flintlock they had. While the exact origins of the swivel breech mechanism are unclear, it was used by the mid-19th century and was found in firearms produced by a variety of manufacturers in both Europe and North America. Some notable examples of the swivel breech mechanism include the Sharps rifle and the Colt revolving rifle. Well, the revolving rifle is not the same. Okay. Let's ask it some basic safety stuff. Let's see if it knows. You know what? Let's start with how do you load a Kentucky rifle? Okay, so I put in how do you load an American long rifle? All right, as it's okay, I'm going to read this whole thing. Loading an American long rifle, also known as a Pennsylvania or Kentucky rifle, typically involves the following steps. Prepare the powder, measure out the appropriate amount of gunpowder for your rifle, Pour it into the barrel. The amount of powder needed will vary depending on the caliber and design of the rifle. So consult your rifle's manual or knowledgeable expert for guidance. Yeah, a manual. I find that funny. Place a patch, cut a patch from a piece of cloth, usually made from linen or cotton, that is slightly larger than the diameter of the rifle's ball. Okay, trying to say make it round. Place the patch over the muzzle of the barrel and push it down the barrel using the ramrod until it reaches the powder. Seat the ball. Take a lead ball that is slightly smaller than the diameter of the barrel and place it on top of the patch. Use a ramrod to push the ball down the barrel, seating it firmly on top of the powder. So that's basically repeating itself. It says repeat steps 2 and 3 for each additional shot. Okay, this is kind of jacked up here. Prime the pan. If your long rifle is a flintlock, you will need to prime the pan with a small amount of gunpowder before firing. To do this, pour a small amount of gunpowder into the pan and close the frizzen. Fire. Aim the rifle at your target and pull the trigger. If your rifle is a flintlock, the flint will strike the frizzen, causing sparks to ignite the priming powder in the pan and ignite the main charge of the powder. If your rifle is a percussion cap rifle, the hammer will strike the percussion cap, causing it to ignite the main charge down the barrel. Okay, reminder, proper handling and safety practices are essential when using any firearm. Always follow the manufacturer's instructions and seek guidance from a qualified expert if you are uncertain about any aspects of maintaining your long rifle. Okay. Alright. It's got the general gist, but it's not perfect. It did make me think of something else here. Alright, let's ask a safety question. Can you use modern smokeless powder in a long rifle? No, modern smokeless powder should not be used in an American long rifle. Alright, so it knows that. Alright, I'm going to hit stop generating. These rifles were designed with black powder or black powder substitutes. Smokeless powder was not invented until the late 19th century, well after the period of American long rifles. Smokeless powder has a much higher energy content than black powder, and it burns much faster and at much higher pressures. Using smokeless powder in a rifle designed for black powder could result in dangerous overpressure and damage to the firearm and could cause serious injury to the shooter or anyone nearby. If you own an American long rifle and wanted to shoot, it is important to use the appropriate type of powder for the rifle's design and caliber. Consult a knowledgeable expert and the rifle's manufacturer. Alright, now let's see. I thought of something else. You know what? Since I get so many comments about this, because I'm still new with flintlock stuff, everybody seems to always be commenting, you flinch, you flinch, you flinch. So I'm going to ask it, how do I fix a flinch when how do I fix a flinch when I when shooting a flintlock? So flinching while shooting a flintlock can be a common problem, especially those that are new to shooting muzzleloading firearms. Here are a few tips to help you overcome a flinch. Practice dry firing. Dry firing your flintlock can help you become more familiar and comfortable with the firearm's recoil and noise without the added pressure of a live round. Make sure to follow all the safety procedures when dry firing, such as ensuring the firearm is unloaded and pointing in a safe direction. Use a snap cap. Snap caps are dummy rounds that can be used for dry firing practice. They can help simulate the recoil and noise of a live round and allow you to practice pulling the trigger without anticipating the shot. Focus on your technique. Proper shooting technique can help reduce flinching. Make sure you are standing with a stable base, gripping the rifle firmly but not too tightly, and pulling the trigger smoothly and steadily. Use hearing protection. The loud noise of a flintlock firing can contribute to flinching. Using earplugs or earmuffs can help reduce the noise and make shooting more comfortable. Take breaks. Shooting a flintlock can be physically and mentally tiring, especially if you experience some flinch. Take frequent breaks and rest and reset. Don't push yourself beyond your comfort level. Remember, it may take time and practice to overcoming a flinch. Be patient with yourself and continue to work on improving your technique and comfort level with the firearm. If you continue to experience problems with flinching, consider seeking guidance from a knowledgeable expert or a shooting instructor. Well, I think that's kind of funny. That's basically everything that's been in all my comments. You know, there's a couple, well, nobody said anything about snap caps. I mean, I don't find that to be all that helpful. But it's pretty close to what everybody's been saying to me. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a synopsis on the way how I feel about this. It's pretty interesting. I've really enjoyed messing around with the Chat GPT. I feel that like certain things in there are not entirely accurate and definitely need to be verified and stuff like that. It does actually, I think some of the stuff in there needs to be verified and there's no real subject matter expert, I don't think, on anything. So, but it can help you out and it's just fun to play with. But it's pretty interesting technology. It's a little on the scary side. It didn't have anything really weird with me, but I think there was other AI things that had some strange reactions. But it was pretty cool. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope you appreciate my content. And if you would like this video and give me a subscription, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you very much.